So many cooks in the kitchen, so many recipes to share. So many cooks in the kitchen with meals for you to prepare. We've got fruits and grains, veggies and beans, more healthy food than you've ever seen. So many cooks in the kitchen, plant-based meals to prepare. So many cooks in the kitchen with ideas we're happy to share.
Welcome to So Many Cooks in the Kitchen. This is our June show, So Many Tomatoes. My name is Dilla Barman. I'm in Durham, North Carolina. So Many Cooks, we are Food for Life instructors. Food for Life is a nutrition education program of the Physicians Committee. We've been doing these shows kitchen to kitchen for over 2 years now. And this month, of course, we're talking about tomatoes. I'm excited about the show. There's about 8 of us presenting today. Tomatoes are a food that many people love. They're high in lycopene. Lycopene is great for heart health, and it may lower LDL, the bad cholesterol, sometimes called bad cholesterol, and does have properties that may help preventing cancer. Before I talk about the recipe, and in today's recipe, some of the ingredients, let's just talk about some of the tomatoes. I went to the market and I got a bounty of tomatoes. I love heirloom tomatoes like this one, and I try to buy all organic, and you can see the label, at least in the United States, if it starts with 9, it means it's organic. This is an heirloom tomato. I love it. When you cut it open, it has beautiful colors of yellow and red. There's all sorts of heirloom tomatoes. It's not in season yet, but I love Cherokee Purple. Purple's my favorite color. You can tell from the orchids in the background one of my students gave me. There's a green zebra that I really love, but look at these beauties. You can get yellow ones, which are a little less acidic. Some people have problems eating tomatoes because it's too acidic for them. Here's a Roma tomato. I don't like Roma tomato in salads. Roma tomatoes are better for sauces. I don't find they have as much flavor. Here's a little tomato, another yellow tomato, and another heirloom tomato. But for today's dish, I'm going to be using beefsteak tomatoes. I like beefsteak tomatoes, and I decided to use beefsteak because this is the kind of tomato I think that my grandfather probably would have used in his recipe. This is a recipe from my grandfather. I'm going to tell you more about him in just a second. So in today's recipe, we're going to be using tomatoes. I got some more tomatoes from the market. These are my favorites. They're called Sun Gold. They're so good. I was surprised to find them in the market already. They taste very sugary. Delicious. So, a variety of tomatoes. So today, we're also going to be using some Indian spices, some cumin, which is in Hindi called jeera, and some kala namak, black salt. And it's not black at all, it's pink, but it's called kala namak. It comes from northwest India and from Pakistan. And we're going to be using a mortar and pestle. So that's going to be something that'll be new for some of us, and we'll talk about mortars and pestles. So I'm going to start by turning on my cast iron pan. It's not hot yet, and you can see a cast iron pan. I love working with cast iron. I'm going to put it on medium-high, and I'm going to put cumin seeds in. This recipe calls for about 1/2 to 1 teaspoon of cumin seeds. I'm going to put more in. I can save them. And what you want to do when you're roasting cumin seeds, they burn easily, so you want to stir them practically continuously. And I'm going to get a mitt to show you. With cast iron, you want to season your pan. I don't use oil, but I do keep oil at home. And what I do after every 4 or 5 times of using the cast iron, I'll put a drop of oil in the cast iron, turn the pan on medium-high, and then I'll just wipe the oil into the pan. And that keeps it looking really nice and keeps it from sticking. So let me tell you more. Oh, and by the way, there's other ways to do this. You can also use a stainless steel pan. If you use a lighter pan, then you'll want to go to a low heat, not medium heat, and you'll want to cook it for about 5-6 minutes. And I wish you were here because you can start to smell the wonderful smell of the roasted cumin. Okay. So the genesis of this recipe is I'm really proud of my grandfather. My grandfather, his dad established a business in India in 1912. And in the 1920s, Raja Cycle became the first company in India to import cars from the United States and Europe. But the thing I'm most proud about is that my grandfather did very well with his business. He did very well financially, but he gave a lot of his money away. He established schools. He donated to the poor. So much so that when Gandhi would visit Rajasthan, where my mom grew up, Ajmer, he would visit my mom's family, and my mom would tell stories of sitting in Gandhi's lap. And when my mom was a little bit older, she was a bit of a firebrand. She used to march in the streets, and she would march for Indian independence. And so the police would sometimes visit and say, your daughter has been marching in the streets again. And they were always very nice to her. They knew that, she was, she meant good by protesting. And so Gandhi would ask about those things. All right, you see how, I don't know if you can see it, but the cumin seed is getting brown. Some of the seeds have gotten a little bit darker. You want to stop before anything gets too dark. And it's only been cooking for about a minute. So I'm going to turn the heat off. And I'm going to actually call it success. You're better off underestimating than overestimating. You don't want to burn your cumin seeds. I'm going to put the cumin seeds, I'm being very careful, I'm using a glove. I'm going to put the cumin seeds in a mortar and pestle, in my mortar. Okay. So there's my mortar. Cumin seeds are also very healthy. They have some, they help with digestion, they may reduce cholesterol, and they have some antimicrobial properties which may reduce the risk of foodborne infection. So what I want to do with the cumin, you can buy pre-ground cumin, but you lose the pungency. So if you've never used a mortar and pestle, then all you have to do is you're going to use your wrist and you're going to do an action like this, a twisting action. And when you get tired, you can also do an action like this. So let me start. You see how I'm doing a rotation? And the key is you don't want to put too many ingredients in. You want to be able to have contact with as much of the seed as possible. So if you're doing a lot of cumin, you want to do it in batches. So I'm using a marble mortar, and I like marble because it's durable and it's non-porous. You don't want mortars that are porous. They get hard to clean, and then you get fragrances here. And you want something which is smooth. Okay. Now, what do you do if you have a mortar that picks up a fragrance? You can put some rice kernels in here and grind it down a little bit, and that'll help clean it. Other choices, and you want to have a big pestle, something that's long. You can get another marble one, but I like wood because it gives a little bit more. So wood is a really good choice. Other things you can do is you can use a coffee grinder. In some of my cooking classes, we were stuck sometimes without a mortar, and what we did is we used a rolling pin. You can just put the spices maybe with some parchment paper and put a rolling pin over it. It's not great. It doesn't do as good a job, but it meets your needs in a pinch. I remember once in one of my cooking classes, we actually used a can. We got a can and we bunched up some paper, maybe even paper towels, and we just went back and forth with the can. So those are some other choices. And you can see the cumin is starting to get ground. And I can occasionally do something like this. I can just press down because your wrist gets tired after a while. Okay. It smells really good. Freshly ground spices like cumin are really pungent, and because you're increasing the surface area to volume ratio of the ingredient, you're getting more of the flavor too. I like this recipe. It's simple. It just uses 3 ingredients, but is really tasty. And you can stop whenever you feel most of the cumin has been broken a bit. Ideally, you want to go until, I like to use like a grain of sugar as a gauge until each of the pieces is no bigger than a piece of sugar. And we're getting there. So this is the longest part of the recipe. By the way, I'm really excited, and we'll probably talk more about this in Q&A, but just last week I announced, along with Carolyn and Cody, who are also cooks in the kitchen, we're going to be doing some plant-based immersions. And our first ones are this summer. We're working with Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute, and we have rented a beautiful place at the beach in September and in the mountains of North Carolina in early August. And we will post details about that. You can join us and learn in person about healthy, whole food, plant-based vegan cooking. We'll be showing the appliances we like to use, the techniques we like. We'll have some time for physical activity, for rest, for hiking, maybe for swimming. So join us and we'll share some more details. I'm really excited about that. Okay, so here's the cumin, and I'm going to call that success. Okay, do you see how it's ground quite a bit since the whole cumin? Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I've already chopped some tomato, and you want to aim for a good mouthfeel size. I like to aim for a little bit more than 1/2 inch. And I didn't, I used beefsteak tomato, and I left half uncut because I wanted to demonstrate for you. Ideally, you want the tomato to be ripe but not overly ripe, and it should look something like this. When you cut into it, you shouldn't have much resistance, but there should be a little bit of resistance. If there's no resistance, it's just a little bit too soft. So, and how can you tell? You can tell by squeezing the tomato, right? So if it gives a little bit, then you're probably good. So let's add a little bit more of the tomato. Okay, so let's add this to the bowl. Feel free to ask questions. While I'm cooking, I can't see your questions, but other folks are watching the Q&A, the chat that's coming in, if you're watching this live. And at the end, we're going to have live Q&A, and we're giving away 2 cool prizes. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the spices, and I'm going to add about a 1/2 teaspoon of kala namak, this black salt. I love it. It has kind of a sulfurous taste. As far as I know, there's not been research that's been done about kala namak, but I've read places that kala namak actually has a lower sodium content than table salt. But it's very useful. It smells good. Those of you who like scrambled eggs and make scrambled tofu, this adds kind of an eggish taste for some people, is what they say. Okay, so a little bit of kala namak. And then I'm going to add about a teaspoon of the cumin, the ground cumin. And that's it. I'm going to mix it up. And serve. So here's a bowl. And that's what you want. It's very simple, very tasty. It was my grandfather's favorite tomato salad. A couple hints, if you want, you can do things like you can add a little bit of greens to it. You could add a little bit of lettuce if you want, a little bit of tangerine. I'm a big tangerine fan, but you don't need to. It tastes perfectly good this way. Let me grab a spoon and I'll tell you how it came out. It's delicious. The tomato almost melts in your mouth. The flavors are wonderful. It's simple, refreshing. That's one thing about salad. Sometimes people go overboard. They add lots of dressings. Sometimes just a few simple things is all you need. This is really good. So we've shared the recipe for this and all the other dishes. Thanks for watching. So next, I pass it on to Susanna Dickman, who's in Indiana. She's making her own version of tomato salad. Take it away, Susanna.
Thanks, Dilip. That salad looks so good. Hi, everyone. My name is Susanna Dickman, and I'm from Evansville, Indiana. You can follow me at eatplantsbewell.com on the internet and on Facebook on Eat Plants Be Well. Today, I'm going to make one of my family's favorite summer salads. And it is, best in the summer because, as we all know, that's when tomatoes are at their peak. And the star of this show, other than the tomatoes, we're going to use little cherry tomatoes, is the cilantro vinaigrette. It is just packed with flavor, and it's quick and easy to make, and I'm so excited to share it with you. I know this, we make this a lot. We will serve it as a side if we're having bean burgers. It's a great picnic travel recipe. It also just could be a main dish if you put it over some crusty bread and make some bruschetta, or sometimes we've just put it over some pasta if we wanted a light and quick and easy summer meal. So let's get started. The ingredients that we're going to use, as I said, we're going to use cherry tomatoes. You can use regular tomatoes if you want, although they're a little bit wetter, so you may want to take out some of the insides, and the juice. But the cherry tomatoes just are perfect. And I'm going to show you a cutting tomato hack that I have watched on YouTube for a while, but I've never actually tried it. I was always kind of leery and thought, yeah, I don't know, but it works and it's so cool. So I hope you'll try it. What you need to cut your tomatoes first are 2 plastic lids. They can be any size. These are just 2 that I bought when I bought these little glass containers. So we're going to take one and we're going to put it down with the lid side down and the rim up. And I'm just going to take as many of my tomatoes as will fit. You can see I've cut some over there. All right, let me get those in. And then I'm going to take the other lid and I'm going to put it with the lid side down like I was covering something. And here I am. So I'm just going to hold it down. And you need a very sharp knife to do that, but I am just going to go right through to the edge. And there we go. Look at that. I just love this. It is so awesome. That one didn't get cut all the way through, but it is so awesome, easy. And I was able to do, a bunch of tomatoes at one time. I just, sorry, but things like that really excite me. I think it's just great. So I hope that you try it. There's one that didn't get sliced, so I'm going to slice it there. So try the hack. Let me know if it works. Let me know what you think. I just had sharpened and honed my knife, so that is really important to do. So I have about 6 ounces or so of tomatoes cut. Obviously, if you have a bigger family, you can double the recipe. Next, I'm going to make my vinaigrette because, as I said, this is really the star of the show. So another, cooking hack that I want to talk about is Aquafaba. Now, many of you know Aquafaba. It is the liquid that comes in a can of chickpeas. And people in the vegan world use it to make whipped toppings. We, in plant-based eating, since we don't cook with oil, I will use it to saute if I need something to saute my onions in, my garlic in, or my vegetables in. I like using it in vinaigrettes and dressings because it has the same viscosity as oil and it holds things together and makes them stick. So I've also included a recipe for chickpeas because, once you open a can of chickpeas and use the Aquafaba, what are you going to do with the chickpeas? So I included just an easy, simple recipe to make some chickpea nibbles, if you will. They're a great snack. When we travel, we'll make a whole bunch and spice them with, either chili powder, cumin, or make them more Italian with oregano, garlic, and onion, and just use them as snacks. So this is my chickpea Aquafaba, and this is about 6 tablespoons. Then we're going to put in some shallot, and shallots are nice. They're milder than an onion. They're in the onion family, but they're a little bit milder, so they work perfect in this. And this was 1 shallot, so add as much or as little as you want. The next thing we're going to add is garlic. Always garlic. And this was 2 cloves. This was 2 fairly big cloves. But if you've been watching me before, you know that, whenever a recipe says 1 garlic clove, I'm going to add at least 4 because I love garlic and so does my family. The next thing we're going to add is cilantro. And I've got some cilantro that's not cut up here in my salad spinner. I know we did appliances a couple of months ago, but salad spinners are the most inexpensive and last the longest, and one of my most favorite appliances because it's great to use to wash greens, herbs. You know, you wash them and then they soak, they spin in here, and everything is dry. And you don't have to, I used to use paper towels and waste a lot of paper towels. So I've got about 2 tablespoons of cilantro in here. The next thing I'm going to add is some lime juice. So let me get that in there. It calls for 2 tablespoons, and with the average size lime, you should be able to get at least 2 tablespoons out of there. All right, get that squeezed out. Let me go ahead and get the juice from the other one. Of course, you can use bottled juice. You don't have to use fresh, but you know, fresh again, it just gives you a more, I think, robust flavor, and it just tastes fresh, you know, the crisp, cool freshness of a lime. Let me mix this up a little bit, and then we're just going to add our tomatoes. So let me go ahead and get those in. As I said, you know, you can use, you don't have to use cherry tomatoes. You can use bigger tomatoes if that's what you have. You can see this doesn't, you know, this probably would be my serving. So I would definitely double or even triple the recipe. Let this sit for maybe, you know, 20 minutes to an hour in the fridge so that all the flavors blend together and marry. But there you have it, a great, easy tomato salad with cilantro vinaigrette. If you don't like cilantro, you know, you can change it to parsley. You don't have to use, you know, make changes. If there are other spices you don't like, that you like better, then go ahead and put those in. But just a great, great side dish or main dish over pasta. All right, well, thank you so much for watching today. Whoops, I forgot 2 ingredients. So these are optional, but I add a pinch of cayenne pepper. And then again, if you're using salt, I just add a pinch. If you, you know, are skipping salt and not eating salt due to health reasons, then you can certainly omit it. It's not necessarily something you need to include. All right, that's it. So enjoy. Carolyn is next, and I can't wait to see what you're making, Carolyn, because it's always great. Thank you again for spending your Saturday with us. Bye.
Thanks, Susanna. That looks great. I can't wait to try your recipe, especially that vinaigrette. That looks really good. This is Carolyn Strickland in Montgomery, Alabama, and I am making a panzanella salad. And if you've never heard of panzanella, it's also referred to as an Italian bread salad. So I am fortunate enough to have gotten to go to Italy recently, and especially to the Tuscany area of Italy. And that is where this panzanella salad originated. There are a couple different cities that argue for the rights to call it theirs, but it definitely came from the Tuscany area of Italy. So the basic ingredients in a traditional panzanella salad are day-old bread and tomatoes, and lots of olive oil, and usually some basil. So those are kind of the basic ingredients. I'm going to kind of play with that a little bit because we're not using oil, so we'll be making an oil-free dressing. And I do have some bread that I have slightly toasted, but let's start with the tomatoes. So there are a few different kinds of tomatoes you could use, really any kind that you like, and what happens to be in season right now where I am is beefsteak. And also I found these little Campari tomatoes at the store. These looked really good and very Italian. So we're going to start with the tomatoes because we want to try and get some of the juice out of the tomatoes to use as part of our salad to moisten the bread. Okay, so when cutting tomatoes, I always like to use an actual tomato knife. And a tomato knife is serrated along the edges. So it's not a straight edge blade like this one. It is a serrated knife, and this actually helps cut through the skin of the tomato, which sometimes can be a little difficult to get through. So go ahead and cut this one into chunks. And then I'm putting it into a colander that I have set over a bowl because I want the liquid to drain out of the tomatoes. Now, some people will put a lot of salt on it to get the tomatoes to drain. We might just use a pinch of salt to get them to drain out a little bit. Also, a lot of people like to remove seeds from their tomatoes. I never do that. I don't mind the seeds in my tomatoes, but if they bother you, go ahead and remove them. That's fine. Ooh, there we go. Just pop that right out. I'll go ahead and take this one out too. There we go. All right, so we'll take those out and I'll compost those and then cut the tomato, the big beefsteaks, into some nice chunks. There we go. So one nice thing about using a silicone mat like this one is that I can pick it up afterward and bend it and funnel all of the liquid into the colander. Okay, just take a few more slices, get all of these tomatoes cut. There we go. So if you have bread and you don't want to wait a day for it to be day-old bread, the trick is to take your bread and cut it in maybe 3/4 inch thick slices and lightly toast it. So I've already done that, and it's waiting for me to add to the salad. Okay, this is a lot of tomato. But this is a tomato show, right? We're talking about tomatoes and how wonderful they are for you. And I know, as Dilip talked about earlier, they are a great source of lots of vitamins and nutrients. Lycopene is one of those really important nutrients that we find in red foods to help prevent prostate cancer. So, okay, so I'm going to pick this up and just bend it up and pour it right through. There we go. Set that aside. So it's going to sit here and drain that liquid out, which is really good. We want that to happen. And if you want to speed up the process and you aren't on a salt-free diet, you could sprinkle it with just a tiny bit of salt, because that actually helps release the juices out of the tomato. Okay, and I'm using iodized sea salt. That's very important. And then we will set this aside to keep draining. Right there, and then I'll get the bread. So I've already cut up the bread into 3/4 inch thick slices, and I lightly toasted it 350 degrees for about 10 minutes because we want it to get kind of dry. And the reason we want to do that is it will soak up the dressing a whole lot more if it's really dry. If you have very moist bread, then your salad is just going to be really soggy, and nobody wants a soggy salad. So we'll take the bread, and you want about 6 cups total, 4 to 6 cups. And I have a really big garlic clove that I already cut up, and I'm going to go ahead and just rub each side with garlic. Yum. So that'll really get some nice garlic flavor into the bread. And because it's dry, it's definitely getting garlic down. You can smell it. Yeah, it's definitely getting garlic into the bread. It's kind of like rubbing it on a Brillo pad. It's just getting the garlic right in there. Whew, in fact, this garlic is getting smaller and smaller, so it is definitely getting into the bread. Okay, there we go. Wow. I almost don't have any garlic left. It's really getting down into the bread. And there we go. Look at that. There's hardly any garlic left. It's all infused into the bread, which is really good. And then I will use my bread knife, which is also serrated, kind of like a tomato knife. And chop it up into big cubes. There we go. I can probably do a few at a time here. And then we have to make our dressing, which is oil-free, because remember, we don't use a lot of oil in our plant-based cooking because oil doesn't have a lot of nutrients in it. It just has a lot of fat. So, okay, a couple more pieces. I think we're getting pretty close to 6 cups of bread cubes. There we go. And a couple more. There we go. Yum. Oh, it smells so good. Okay. And one more. Just get the peel sliced up. Okay, there we go. That is a lot of bread cubes. All right, and we're going to set those aside while we do the dressing. Okay, so for this dressing, we're using sun-dried tomatoes. So it's all about tomatoes today, and I'm using tomatoes in 2 different ways. We have fresh tomatoes and we have sun-dried tomatoes. And the kind I'm using are these packaged sun-dried tomatoes. So they are dry. They are not preserved in oil. They are just dry sun-dried tomatoes. And so to be able to use those, we have to reconstitute them. So I let them sit for about 20 minutes with boiling water, about a cup of boiling water poured over. And this is 1/4 cup of sun-dried tomatoes. So I'm putting that in the blender along with, we have, let's see, 1/4 cup of red wine vinegar. And I'm using this kind, but any kind of red wine vinegar is fine, of 1/4 cup. And then Italian seasoning, and I'm using about 1/2 teaspoon of Italian seasoning. You could put a whole teaspoon if you want to, if you really like Italian seasoning. You could also just use oregano if you don't have Italian seasoning. So put that in. There we go. And a clove of garlic that I've already peeled. And 2 tablespoons of pine nuts. Now, pine nuts are expensive and sometimes hard to find. So if you can't find pine nuts, use walnuts, and that's fine too. It's just 2 tablespoons. They are high in fat, but they are also high in omega-3 fatty acids, which are really good for us. So it's only 2 tablespoons in the entire dressing recipe. So, and like I said, use walnuts if you can't find pine nuts. Also, I have used walnuts in this recipe and it comes out great. So either way. And then we have 1/2 cup of water. And a few pinches of fresh cracked pepper. You could also add a few pinches of salt if you really want to, but if you're on a low salt diet, don't do that. And then we'll get this all whirled up. And you might have to stop and scrape it down a few times because there's still some kind of solid chunks in here. So we'll whirl it up, get it scraped down. Oh my goodness, there's a lot up in the lid. And then we'll get it scraped down off the sides and give it one more whirl. Ooh, it is very, very strong smelling because of that red wine vinegar and the garlic, but woo, once it gets all infused into the bread cubes, it's just going to be delicious. Okay, here we go. One more time. All right, I think that is perfect. Okay, whoops. There we go. It's dripping on the counter a little bit. Okay, set that aside. Now, let's go back to the tomatoes. It looks like they have drained really well. So there's a lot of liquid out of them. That is great. So we're going to set that aside. We'll get back to those in just a minute. And in the bowl with all this tomato juice is where I'm going to add, get rid of the tomato stems first, and I will add in the dressing into the tomato sauce. I mean, into the tomato juice that drained out. Okay, we'll set that aside and then give that a good stir and get the tomato juice incorporated into the dressing. It's a lot of tomato. And then we're adding in some shallot, this is just one small shallot. So remember, a shallot is in the onion and garlic family, but it's that kind of purpley brown one. And it's just a small shallot that I thinly sliced with a mandolin. And we'll put that in here. Let's see. I'm going to set the bread cubes aside for just a second so you can see in the downward shot what I'm doing right here. Okay, we'll find a good spoon for this and get that mixed up. And then I'm adding in some cucumber, which is one small English cucumber. You can remove the seeds if you want to. I really never do. This was a very small cucumber. It would have been hard to get the seeds out. So putting that in. And I did a half of a red bell pepper. You could use a whole red bell pepper if you want to. And let's see. All right, so just stir that into it. And then I'm going to add the tomatoes. Get that all coated. And then we'll get the tomatoes in here. And the bread cubes. The part that makes it Panzanella. Bread cubes. There we go. And give that all a good stir. Yum. Oh, this smells so good. And then I'm going to add a couple tablespoons of capers. You could leave them out. If you don't like capers, you could use olives instead, just a couple tablespoons. We'll toss those in. And then the one thing that just makes it really Italian, which is what we're going for here, is fresh chopped basil. So I have a bunch of fresh basil from my backyard right here. So we'll set that aside. Get our cutting board again. Okay. And we want about a half a cup. This may be a little more than half a cup. That's okay. So I want to take basil, and I'll see if I can show this where you can see what I'm doing here with it stacked up. So we're going to take a stack of basil. And you could do a chiffonade cut, which means you're going to roll up the basil and just thinly slice it like that. So it comes out in these beautiful little ribbons. We'll put that in. Or if you happen to have herb scissors, then you could also take just a stack of basil and start slicing with herb scissors, and it comes out already in a chiffonade. pretty sure they have these on Amazon. These were a gift from my mom. Thank you, Mom. So they come out in these beautiful little ribbons, just like doing a chiffonade cut. All right, so yum, yum, yum. This is my favorite salad. I love a good panzanella salad. It is beautiful. It's the colors of Italy. It's red and green and white. It's so pretty. And you want to let this sit for about 30 minutes because you want that dressing to soak into the bread. So you're not just eating dry, crusty bread. And 30 minutes is probably about right. It could probably sit a little longer. I would not refrigerate it. Just leave it at room temperature and then serve it. It's not that great as a leftover. It's really good fresh. So we're going to eat this. This is just delicious. So we'll let it sit about 30 minutes. I'm not sure I can wait. And then we'll chow down. So if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A or type your questions in. And remember, we have a giveaway. So if you ask a question, you can be entered in the drawing. And then right now I'm going to kick you over to Janan in Abu Dhabi. So take it away, Janan.
Hi, Carolyn. Your panzanella sounds yummy and looks yummy too. I hope I can do that one of these days. Welcome everybody to my kitchen in Abu Dhabi. Today, our day of tomatoes. Look at these beauties. I will be talking to you about oven roasted tomatoes. It's a very simple dish with very few ingredients, and you can enjoy it in many, many diverse ways that you can think of. First, we wash and dry our tomatoes. I have them in my kitchen cloth here just to show you that after having washed them, I patted them dry, and they're nice and dry right now. So basically you just cut the tomatoes in half and place them on your parchment paper lined oven-proof dish or cookie sheet or whatever you have. So my tomatoes are ready, and then you take some fresh thyme and some garlic and chop them very fine. And fresh thyme sprigs can be a little woody, therefore we don't use the full stem. I guess you could if you don't mind them, but so basically you take it and you pull apart these little beautiful little leaves, and you chop very fine. That's important. It takes a little bit of time. I guess no pun intended here. But here's my chopped thyme and garlic. And some dry oregano, salt and pepper, and the optional date sugar. This is 100% dried and pulverized dates, so it's not really even an extract of sugar from dates. It's really wonderful. However, spoiler alert, I do not use it in my dish. I prefer the natural sweet taste of really yummy sweet cherry tomatoes. That's why I make this dish with really, really sweet cherry tomatoes. I call them nature's candy. But optional, if you wish, you can sprinkle a little bit. So once your tomatoes are on the cookie sheet, I don't know if you can see this well, you sprinkle with some salt, lightly, and if you do not use salt, you could skip this, and you put a little bit of pepper on each of them. And then you take your wonderful garlic and fresh thyme mix and drop a little on each one. Once ready, you pop this into your oven. So I have some dry oregano too. I'm just showing you how I make it because I've already done it yesterday, so I'm going to show you this lovely dish. So basically, this is it. Now, if you wanted, you could also sprinkle just a tiny bit of date sugar on it if you like that extra sweetness. I always think the important thing to get us going in transitioning to plant-based nutrition, plant-based way of life, is to enjoy the new foods that we taste. So if it's going to take a pinch of date sugar, then go for it. Getting joy from your food is a really important step. So this is really easy. I'm going to put this tray in the back now. You would normally stick it in your oven, but as I said, for saving time, I've done it yesterday. So here's my already cooked cherry tomatoes, oven roasted. If you could see them closer, you'll notice that the edges are slightly browned. They are nice and still plump. They're not extremely liquidy, but they're cooked nicely, roasted nicely, and you still have the juiciness and the meatiness of the tomato. These, in a covered container, will keep about 3, maximum 4 days in the fridge. So you can make them ahead of time and enjoy them. Today I will use it for making a wonderful bruschetta. I've been heating a piece of whole grain sourdough bread, and I have another piece of garlic here, and that makes it easier to take the skin off. And on a nicely warmed piece of toast, you can rub your garlic and have some avocado. This is taking an avocado toast to another level. Here we go. We have our lovely avocado. And you can also serve this dish, these oven roasted tomatoes, with your in a pasta salad, rice salad, other grain salad, or warm pasta dishes. It will take your aglio olio, famous simple Italian pasta of just garlic and chili peppers and a drizzle of olive oil. So here's my toast with avocado, and I'm now going to take these lovely oven roasted tomatoes and put them all over this. And push some in. This is lovely. So, then you have a lovely avocado toast with unroasted tomatoes on top. Now, don't know if this gives you an idea, but you can also use oven roasted tomatoes in your guacamole. It just gives it that extra deep flavor of cooked tomatoes and all the yummy umami that comes with it. A few ideas more is basically you can also just take your avocado, nicely slice it inside, there you go, and plop them on. This is just an even simpler way to serve your avocado, and as a snack or as an appetizer. I'm going to have these for lunch later. So here we are. The dishes are ready. the oven roasted tomatoes are just so simple to make. A couple of things about the nutrition. I will highly recommend everybody to watch Dr. Greger's Antioxidants in a Pinch video. There he talks about the value all these herbs and spices add to our dishes. Just even a tiny sprinkle or a little addition boosts the antioxidant power of the dishes that we eat. And that's really important because it improves our immunity, they help fight off cancer and so on. So this simple dish of roasted tomatoes enhances the lycopene in the tomato because when cooked, the lycopene is easier to absorb. And with the addition of extra herbs of the thyme and the oregano, it's even boosted more. Now, lycopene is a oil, it dissolves in oil better, and it's absorbed better if you have oil with it. But since I try to cook with no oil or very, very little oil, I often just avoid it. However, as you can see here, this avocado is loaded with its natural oils, and they're happier, healthier in the whole food form. So my lycopene combined with the natural oils in the avocado will provide me all I need to absorb it and metabolize it in a very easy fashion. So another quick tidbit is that we're entering summer, and in the summer you can actually do this dish by going through the entire process, chopping them, salting and peppering them, putting the little spice mix and garlic on it, and taking it out in the hot sunlight. So if you have more than 30 degrees centigrade or above 85, 90 degrees Fahrenheit and not very humid conditions, you can do this in the sun. So it will lack the caramelization that the long oven cooking will give. However, it's really good fun to be able to do that out there. Now don't forget it under the sunshine because it will just get dry and shrivel up, at which time you'll have sun-dried tomatoes. And a word of caution, if you do this outside, put some kind of a fly screen so that you don't get all sorts of flies munching on your tomatoes. So my presentation is over today. I would like to share with you all that until the pandemic, we were doing plant-based tours to Italy, an immersion course of the Food for Life Kickstart classes. And in 2023, my partner Tracy and I will be starting those again. So if you would like more information, drop me an email, and we hope to see you in Italy on one of our Kickstart immersion classes. It will be a plant-based tour of northern Italy too, so you'll enjoy learning about Food for Life classes, plus have a plant-based tour. Now, before I go, I would like to let you know that my colleague, Cody Stubbe in Omaha, Nebraska is next. So take it away, Cody, and goodbye from Abu Dhabi. See you next time.
Thank you, Jonan. That looks fantastic as always. I am just always looking forward to trying your recipes. So thank you for that wonderful demonstration. And it's wonderful to see you again. So welcome everybody. My name is Cody Stubbe and I'm in Omaha, Nebraska. And today I'm going to demonstrate ratatouille. And this is just kind of my version of it. It's very simple. I'm sure it's different than the original one. I think it originated in France, and I think they used like peppers with that one. So this one's just gonna be a really quick and easy, simple dish. It's great as a side dish, or you can add it on like a bed of quinoa and make it a complete meal. You can add some seitan to it, which would be fantastic. So first of all, we're going to start with a preheated oven at 375 degrees. And we're gonna just do kind of a small pan. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna take like your favorite marinara sauce, and you wanna look for something that doesn't have any added sugar to it, or any extra oil added to it. And you're just gonna put in probably about 1 cup to 2 cups of sauce at the bottom of that pan. And you can add more if you like it really saucy. And then we're gonna have chopped up vegetables. We're gonna have 1 eggplant, about 2 nice sized tomatoes here. And we're gonna have an onion and like a zucchini and a yellow squash. So we're gonna have those all chopped up here, ready to go. Okay, so this is the fun part, and it's great to get kids involved with this because it's really making a beautiful dish. So I'm gonna show you just kind of quickly kind of how to layer these up. And it doesn't matter what you start with or what order you go in, it's just gonna be a fun dish. So for now, I'm just gonna start with some tomatoes, and then you can do it however you want. So it doesn't have to be in order. So eggplant, and then I kind of like to do both the zucchini and a yellow squash together, and then of course onions. So kind of like that. And I'm just going to kind of show you, how you alternate them for the entire dish. It can take just a few minutes, but not too long. And it's just a lot of fun. I know my girls like to do this kind of thing. And it's going to have such great flavor. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's going to be amazing how the colors just kind of work together. So just kind of alternate that. I love onions. We're going to top it off with some freshly minced garlic. And if you guys have seen my show, oh my gosh, you guys know how much my family loves garlic. So that is going to be a wonderful addition to this. Add some more onions. And they don't have to be perfectly sliced. You can use, I think it's called a mandalay slicer for that if you want to, if you want them perfectly sliced. I did do that for some of them. But you don't have to. You can just use a nice sharp knife. Just don't cut yourself. And you just layer it on up. I kind of like to make mine in a nice little order. So I think I got onions next. And then we got some tomatoes next. And what I like to also do is kind of like squish it to the side a little bit. So if you can see that, I'm kind of getting some really pretty colors here, right? And I love it. And you can get these vegetables like at a really good price. So it's a very affordable side dish or meal. Like I said, if you want to add more to it, you can. So I'm just going to do that throughout the whole dish here. And then I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but what you can do after this, you get the whole dish filled up like that. What I love to do is sprinkle on some of the minced garlic, and you usually do about 3 cloves. These are big cloves. So when I mean big, they're about like this size. They're about, oh goodness, they're probably almost a quarter-sized cloves. They're big. So I'm going to sprinkle that throughout the whole dish. And then I love fresh rosemary. So I'm going to sprinkle some of that on top. And leave that. That is it. So what I would do the whole thing, put the foil on top, and I'm going to put it in that preheated oven at 375 for about an hour. And you just want the vegetables to be nice and tender. And it's going to come out beautiful. Let me show you here a finished one. So this is how it looks afterwards. Look at all the beautiful colors there. It is just going to be fantastic. Sometimes I also like to sprinkle on just a little bit of Italian seasoning over the whole thing. And before I serve it, I like to, sprinkle a little bit of freshly chopped sweet basil. And I like to grow this in my own pot on the front porch. So the girls like to go out there and just eat some. They're high in antioxidants, so they're very, very healthy for you, and it adds a lot of flavor. So I have that here, and I'm just going to show you what it looks like dished up. And like I said, it's just, You can even put this on a bit of rice. Oh, it's delicious. So there we go. Oh my goodness. It looks so good. You can garnish it, make it look extra beautiful with some fresh basil or some fresh rosemary. And there we go, everybody. This is Cody's Ratatouille, so I hope that you enjoy. Give it a try. And I also want to mention that, well, earlier, Dilip had mentioned that we're going to do an immersion together in North Carolina. And I'm so excited to tell you more about that and give you the link. So we'll have the link going across on our screen here pretty soon, and you're welcome to check it out. We'd love to see you there. We're going to have some of our favorite recipes that we're going to show you how to make in person, so that way you can replicate those at home and learn how to eat whole food, plant-based for your health. And so thank you for joining me. I really enjoyed having you, and I will see you over at Q&A. All right, thank you. And I'm going to pass it on to Suzanne, who's going to make a very interesting dish. I'm excited to see. This is called shasuka. I believe it's a breakfast dish. So I'm going to pass it on over. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I am Suzanne Fellows. I am coming to you from Farmington Hills in Michigan. Welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to be making a dish called shakshuka, which is a traditional dish from the Middle East and Africa that is made from tomatoes. It has a tomato base. Many shakshukas also contain eggs, which we will not be using today, being that this is a plant-based, vegan, whole foods dish. So I'm going to show you that you do not need the egg to have a delicious shakshuka. So today, what we're going to be using are canned tomatoes, which you could use fresh tomatoes, but honestly, in this dish, canned tomatoes work great. They're available year-round, and they're delicious. So I like to buy organic canned tomatoes. And part of the reason is because of the tomato itself being organic. But the other thing that we know about organic cans of organic tomatoes is that the can is a safer can. So that is also really important when we are working with tomatoes, is to use a high quality canned tomato. I already have my onions brewing here in this stovetop. So shakshuka is really nice because you can take your time with it. It can be a dish that you slowly make, or you can also make a one-pot shakshuka that you could make on the stove and then throw into the oven to finish, or you can just make the whole thing right on the stove and then serve it right from there. So today's dish, we are going to start with our one medium yellow onion already chopped. And as I said, I've already have it cooking so that the onion probably takes the longest to cook. And without using oil, I keep adding a little bit of water to create some steam and to keep the onion from sticking to the bottom of the pan. And this onion looks pretty translucent now, if you can see that. So I'm going to go ahead and I will add our zucchini, red pepper, and yellow pepper. The recipe itself, it just has one whole red pepper listed, but I like to use a half a red and a half a yellow. So we're going to go ahead and add that to our pot and allow that to saute. And then we will add our seasonings next. A piece of parsley already dropped in, so I'm going to take that out. I'm going to let this start to cook up and saute quickly. And then we will start with the seasonings. And that's really what makes this dish so special, are the warm flavors of cumin. You can make it with paprika, coriander. This today specifically just calls for garlic, cumin, coriander, turmeric, and red chili flakes, only if you wish for it to be spicy. You do not need to add the red chili flakes for your dish to still be delicious. So we're going to let this saute a minute while I start measuring out the spices. And we're going to start with our cumin that has 2 teaspoons. And then we will move on to our coriander with 1 teaspoon of coriander. The great thing cooking with cumin is that it is so healthy for you. It has so many great benefits. Cumin helps promote digestion. It is naturally rich in iron. It acts as an anti-inflammatory agent. It helps, it has products called flavonoids, which really act as an antioxidant. And also, there's been studies that have shown that cumin can help regulate blood sugar. So it really has a lot of healthy benefits. And it's really good in any recipe. You can use cumin in different chilies, tacos, and then we have the turmeric here, which is also another anti-inflammatory. So you can see how this dish can really be very health promoting. And we'll wait to add the peppers. And again, since we are not using oil, don't forget, anytime your food looks like it's starting to stick to the pan, go ahead and just splash it with a little bit of water. And we're going to stir up all these spices. And we also need to add the garlic. So the recipe itself, it's called for 3 medium garlic cloves. So today I'm going to show you a product that I really like to use when I don't feel like getting smelly, my hands to get smelly or dirty from garlic. It's my little cheat. And you can find it in the freezer of most grocery stores, Kroger, Trader Joe's, and they're crushed garlic, and it's the freshest garlic. The brand is called Dorat, and they come in these little cubes, and you keep them in the freezer. So when you're ready to use them, they just pop right out. So you can see how they just popped right out of the container. And you can also put it right into your dish. And then they just kind of melt in. So every cube is equal to 1 clove of garlic. So traditionally, many shakshukas are made with eggs. And again, we always get that question, where do you get your protein? Well, not from eggs. And it actually makes the dish much more delicious. It's something that I like to add to shakshuka are chickpeas. You can also use tofu if you wish. But I really like to use chickpeas in my shakshuka. The next thing we're going to add are the tomatoes. The recipe calls for crushed, but you can use diced if you like your shakshuka a little more chunky, as I do here. And we're going to throw in about 1/4 cup of parsley. And we'll save a little bit for the topping. And all you're going to do is stir this right up. This is a great fast meal. It's very filling. This is 1 can of chickpeas that have already been drained and well rinsed. And we're just going to stir this all together. And you'll see the vibrant colors. And it makes it look so pretty. And this smells wonderful. So as you're learning from today's show, there are so many things you can do with tomatoes. They're not just for slicing and putting on a sandwich. They're great to cook with. They're great to eat in salads. And as we're going to see very soon, Angelina is also going to show us how to make fried green tomatoes. So here is our shakshuka. And to serve it, I highly recommend, if you want it to be a more filling meal, you can put it over grains, such as a bowl of quinoa or some farro, rice, or even throwing some potatoes inside. So at this point, all you have to do is just turn it down, cover it, and let it simmer, and eat it as soon as you're ready. Usually about 10 minutes is a perfect time to go ahead and enjoy your shakshuka. So we're going to go ahead and pass the show on to Angelina Hughes, who's going to show us her fried green tomatoes. Enjoy the show, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, Suzanne. That looks delicious. I'm actually going to try that this evening. I've got an abundance of tomatoes, and I always love trying new recipes from around the world. Thank you so much for sharing that. Good afternoon. My name is Angelina Hughes. I'm in Greenville, South Carolina. I have the pleasure of being a Food for Life instructor and being able to be on here on So Many Cooks in the Kitchen with you guys. Today I'm going to share with you one of my all-time favorites, and that is fried green tomatoes. Growing up, my mom would make these for us, and she would fry them in oil, and I would make sandwiches out of them, which I know they weren't the healthiest because they were like deeply crispy fried in the oil. But anyway, so it took me a while to come up with this recipe, trying to figure out how I'm going to get the coating to stick to the outside of the tomato. So the recipe is available for all of y'all, and all the steps are in there. So I'm kind of just going to walk you through it. What I do is I buy my tomatoes where they're light green and they have a little bit of yellow or light green. Sometimes they have streaks of oranges. This is what we used to call breakers when we were growing up, because they're breaking, and you can actually purchase them like this, lay them like this on your counter, and they will ripen up. So when I buy tomatoes, I buy them a little bit with not as much orange on here, and then I buy some like this, so then that way they last me all week. I do not keep my tomatoes in the refrigerator. That's just me. That's the way we grew up. Mom always said that they would absorb the smell that was in the refrigerator, so this is just how I've always done it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a sharp knife, and we are going to cut the top, and then we're going to cut the back. Oops. And then you're going to want to cut these into like a 1/4 inch, just kind of gauge it. Thickness. So if you have a really sharp knife, that helps a lot. Just be very careful because it's easier to cut yourself with a dull knife than it is a sharp knife. And then you're just going to take your potato peeler, your vegetable peeler, and you are just going to peel the skin right off. Now, of course, you can peel it before you cut it. It just depends on how many you're going to do, how fast you want to do it. This doesn't take long. And so then once we take the skin off, we're going to put everything inside a Ziploc style bag. What I do, I don't know if anybody else does this, but I don't like for my fried green tomatoes to get mushy from all the seeds that are in here. So I remove the seeds. So then that way, if it's going to be a while before we eat, they stay crispier longer. So this is all we do. You take all this off of there. My mom used to sprinkle them with salt to remove the excess moisture. And then she would rinse them, and then she would dip them in the traditional egg and all that. I'm just like, no, I've got to find an easier way to be able to enjoy the comfort foods that remind me so much of my mother. Okay, so we've got these taken off, and I put those in my little bowl right here. And what I use to remove the seeds is a grapefruit spoon. This works to scoop out squash, zucchini. It's amazing what you can do with this. And all I do is just right over my bowl, I simply just take out the seeds, and I just put it in here, and it'll go into my compost pile. So you're just going to do that to all your tomatoes. And I'm not going to sit here and do all of them because I've got quite a few to do. So I just kind of wanted to show you. And then the recipe, the amount is for about 1 pound maybe pound and a half of tomatoes. So I'm just going to do one so you can kind of see what it is that I do. So you just take the tomato, you put it in the bag, you add your cornstarch, just kind of gauge it. If you're just going to do one, if you just want to have a quick lunch. You can use tapioca starch for this as well. And you just shake it. And I reuse this bag, so when I'm done, I wash it and then dry it and reuse it for this. So you can see how well coated they are. So now that I've got that done, I'm going to use this Primal Kitchen non-dairy buffalo sauce with avocado oil. There is 3.5 grams of fat in here, which is about 1 tablespoon. So this is just a treat. It's not something you're going to want to have every day. And I just pour that in there. Then we're going to shake it. You can have the kids do this part. This is a lot of fun. Or if you've had a bad day and you're a little bit stressed out, this helps out. Kind of relieve some of that. All right, and so I'm just doing this just to show you how well this works. And see, we're coated on both sides. Now when we're done with that, you take your breadcrumbs. Panko breadcrumbs is what I use, so please read the ingredients because some of these do have milk product in them, so just make sure you're getting the ones that don't have any milk product in there. And you can use seasoned breadcrumbs as well if you'd like. I like the garlic and herb. That one's pretty good with this also, and it just intensifies the flavor of the tomato. And you can use this for zucchini or cauliflower, eggplant, squash. All right, and so here we are, coated on both sides. Coated on both sides. And all you do is you put it in your air fryer. I have the Ninja 6-in-1. I preheat it at 400 and I put it in there for 10 minutes. I just lay it on there. I let it cook for about 4 to 5 minutes. I open it up and then just with my water bottle, that's all I have in here, I spray it. I let it cook for about another 3-4 minutes. I flip it over and then I spray the other side. By that time, everything is really, really hot and you get a beautiful golden color on there. And here is what they look like. Coated on both sides. And look at how beautiful that is. That is amazing. I like to eat these with homemade ranch sauce. I think you can go back on some of our episodes. We might have that. If not, the jalapeno lime balsamic vinegar is amazing on these. This one came from our local kitchen store here in Greenville, South Carolina. So that is my recipe. It's quick, it's easy. If you're tired at the end of the day and you just want something just simple to eat, you can make yourself a nice big green salad and just put this on top and you will be very, very satisfied and you'll be eating healthy. I thank you so much for spending the afternoon with us. We really do appreciate you guys. And again, my name is Angie and my company is Earth Seeds and Water, www.earthseedsandwater. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me there, or you can contact me at Angelina at So Many Cooks in the Kitchen. Thank you so much. And up next, we have Karen, who is making a tomato, mango, and chipotle dressing, which I think would be really good with this as well. You can never get too many tomatoes. So take it away, Karen. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Angelina. That looks yummy and fun. All right. Yes, I'm Karen Osborne, myfoodfitnessandfun.com here in Austin, Texas. And I am going to show you a tomato mango chipotle dressing. You can use it for a dressing, a salad dressing, or a dipping sauce. And there's no added oil, nuts, seeds, nothing. So it's a very light but very flavorful dressing. And this is just the base. You can doctor it up. Sometimes I like to put garlic in it. You can put garlic granules and onion powder, but I'm going to show you the basic dressing, and it's perfect just the way it is. So let's get started. I'm going to lower my screen. And aren't those pretty colors? All the it's very simple ingredients. I've got a little bit of lime juice and some mango and some, I'm using Roma tomatoes. They're good for a sauce because there aren't a lot of seeds and they are the least expensive. So I'm just going to chop them a little bit to help the blender along. And the thing about this dressing, why this works, is tomatoes and mangoes both have pectin, which is the starch. It's a fiber that actually it gives the fruit or the vegetables its structure, and it actually thickens as you blend it. So the more you blend it, the thicker it's going to get. So this is how we thicken it without oil or any fat, added fat. All right. So the mango, usually to work, any variety of tomato will work for this recipe, and any variety of mango will work. So usually 2 of these give me a heaping cup, but this looks like I cut one already. I'm just going to chop them just to kind of help measure. And it looks like we only need about 1.5 of these, but I'll be happy to eat the other half, or you could throw it in. It's not like making a souffle. You can, it'll work. It'll just make it a little bit sweeter. If you like, if you prefer that, you can just put more than a cup. Great. So I'm just going to dump the mango and the tomato. And then I'm going to put the lime juice in. If you don't have limes, you can use apple cider vinegar. I've got chipotle powder, which is just the dried and smoked jalapenos. So they're smoked for like a couple of days, which really dries it out, and it just really smells good and tastes good. It's a little spicy. Like if you don't want it too spicy, I'd put 1/4 teaspoon in. I got a 1/2 teaspoon here. All right. So the only other, well, there's 2 other ingredients. This is umi vinegar. It's made with the brine from the umi plums. So the plums are called umi plums. They're Japanese plum, like an apricot kind of thing, and they ferment them. They dry them with salt, ferment them, and then what's left over. So once they are salted and kind of dried, they're called umeboshi plums, and then what's left over is the brine. So this is salty. And if you don't have this or don't want to buy this, you can just put a little bit of salt in there to taste. Or if you're not using salt, just ignore that. Let's see what I've got. Like let's see, tablespoon. Right. You can use less if you don't want that much. But this is actually antibacterial. It's good, really good. It's antibacterial. It's antiviral. It's a good salt substitute too. All right, so I'm just going to put that in. And then the last thing I have is tomato, soaked sun-dried tomatoes. So I'm going to blend this up just to show you how thick it gets without this. And it's perfectly fine to use it without this. And especially if you want to do like a salad dressing. If you want to make it a little bit thicker for a dipping sauce or something, you can add the tomatoes. So I'm going to blend it first, show it to you, and then put the tomatoes in. Sun-dried tomatoes. So they're just plain sun-dried tomatoes, no salt, no oil. I'm going to mute myself for a second while I blend. So I forgot one thing I was going to mention besides all the vitamins and minerals and the everything you've heard about tomatoes. One other benefit of tomatoes is they can help protect you from sunburn. All right, let me see if you can tell how thick this is. And I could blend it a little bit more and get it even a little thicker. So this is fine for, it actually tastes really good this way. I'm just going to go ahead and put it on my salad like this. And then I'll put you can have as much or as little as you want, but it's really good. So that's like for a salad dressing. Then I'm going to put the sun-dried tomatoes in and thicken it up just a little bit. It would be like for a dipping sauce. If I made nori rolls, it's good to dip in. The fried tomatoes, like Angelina made, it would be good. You can put it on rice and beans. You could do a Buddha bowl, put it on there. I'm just gonna mute myself again and blend it one more time. All right, how simple was that? And you can see it's a little bit thicker. And, you know, you could taste it now and add any more. If you wanted it hotter, put a little more chipotle powder. It's a nice smoky flavor. If you don't want it too hot, but you want more smoky flavor, do some smoked paprika. See if you want any more lime juice or vinegar, whatever. I mean, this is just the base and you can play with it and have fun. And now we are going to Q&A. We're going to have some prizes, a $25 gift certificate from Seed Savers, and also a subscription to Veg News magazine. So ask some questions to get entered into the drawing. So I'm going to throw it back to Dilip for Q&A.
Hello. Let me bring us all in. So we have, thanks, Karen. I always love watching your demonstrations. They're always so good. And let's bring Carolyn in. And let me mention before we start Q&A, Carolyn has a plane to catch. So she's going to take off in half an hour. So, and then there's Susanna. So, and Cody may be joining us. Cody had actually had to run off to a birthday party, but it's going to try to come back. So she may or may not be back. But this is our group for today. So thanks everybody for a great show so far. And Karen, I know you just got out of the kitchen, but you are now on duty to take notes of people who ask questions. We've gotten some really good questions so far. But from this point forward, questions that come in, we're going to write your name down, and then you'll be in the drawing for our prizes. So while we're waiting for the first few questions, I wanted to start it off with, so Carolyn, let me kind of focus on you. I mean, we have half an hour. We'll probably be done anyhow, but just let me ask you the first question. You had an interesting discussion about knives, and we haven't spent much time in our shows talking about knives. Could you talk both about knives and about your colander? So I use my colander for draining, but I've never used my colander for draining tomatoes. I make Panzanella too, and maybe I should do that to get a little bit of the moisture out. So could you talk about both those appliances or both those kitchen tools, knives and colanders? And then when you're done, talk a little bit about the immersion, if you would.
Sure. Okay, so with knives, I always recommend going with the best knives you can afford. So, and you can actually find pretty decent knives, even at Walmart, but you just want to make sure they're well made and you keep them sharp, because dull knives are actually how accidents happen in the kitchen. If you're having to push too hard, you know, sometimes you're going to cut yourself. If you're using a dull knife, it just doesn't work as well, and you end up having more accidents. There are certain knives that are much better for different uses. So a tomato knife will have a serrated edge, kind of like a bread knife works better with a serrated edge. Things like a santoku knife, the kind that keeps things from sticking to the side of it. Those Japanese knives work really well for slicing things like avocados and things that are kind of sticky that might stick to the side of it. So yeah, I actually took a whole knife course as part of a cooking school I did because I accidentally cut off the end of one of my fingers. It grew back, it's fine. But I'm weirdly like an octopus, I guess, because the end of my finger came back. But I was cutting collards and I was doing it wrong. And I was probably using the best knife, but I wasn't using the best technique. So yeah, there are definitely different knives you want to use for different uses. So serrated with tomatoes, serrated with bread, paring knives for smaller things like small fruits, that kind of thing. And the colander was basically a fine mesh colander, so not one of the big ones with the big holes in it, because I wanted to kind of save as much of the tomato as I could in it. I was really just trying to get the liquid out to add it to the dressing, because we were rehydrating that bread. So we don't want the bread to be soggy, but we also don't want it to be dry and crunchy. You want it to soak up some of the dressing, and getting the liquid from the tomato out and whisking it into the dressing was what I was trying to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sounds good. Did you want to take a moment and talk about our immersion, by the way?
Oh, our immersion. So Dilip and I will be in the Outer Banks of North Carolina at Oak Island. I think it's September 21st, 22nd, 23rd. And there, I don't have a calendar in front of me. And we will be doing an immersion weekend where you can come spend the whole weekend with us at a beautiful beach house. And we'll be showing all kinds of really interesting recipes and doing cooking demos and talking about some of the basics about if you're just starting out going plant-based, how do you do that? And how do you cook rice? How do you cook beans? How do you, some of the basics, plus probably some more fun recipes too, and walks on the beach, maybe some yoga, meditation, stuff like that. So
it should be a lot of fun. This is one of my favorite beaches, and it's going to be in the 80s, the water typically in September. So it's just
that sounds
beautiful.
nice.
And where we have I think 3-sided views of water from our place. So I believe
wow.
this is through Rochester Lifestyle Medicine, and I think registration, we're hoping to open on Monday. That'll be for the one that Cody and I are doing in the mountains, and the one that we're doing, Carolyn, I don't think we're going to start taking registration on Monday. That'll probably be another week or two down the road.
Okay.
But yeah, check out bit.ly/WFPB immersion. These should be really fun.
Can you also go to Rochester Lifestyle Medicine website and look at it? Does that work?
Absolutely. You can go to Rochester Lifestyle Medicine. Okay, I have my own questions, but some other questions are coming in. So welcome, Martine. I think you're new to our show. We're delighted to see your questions. And whether you're new or not, we hope to see you next month. Next show is on onions, so many onions, and we have shows every month. So Martine asked, what brand of oil-free marinara sauce? So I think a few of us use marinara sauce. Susanna, I think you used marinara sauce, didn't you?
I did. I made my own last month in our show. So you're welcome to look at the recording from that, because I use canned tomatoes, but I just put them in my crock pot and let them cook all day. Store-bought, I know Trader Joe's had a really good oil-free brand that I have purchased. Aldi, if you have an Aldi store, they're around in a lot of places. I've also gotten an oil-free marinara sauce there, because sometimes at a pinch, it's nice to have store-bought. But other than that, I mostly, like I said, if you look at our show from last month, I have a real easy recipe for a marinara that I made in my slow cooker.
Let me just add to that. So sometimes people ask why we focus on oil. Oil is pure fat. It really brings no nutrients to the plate. But people vary in this. In the Food for Life program, we do suggest not using oil or using very minimal amount of oil. This is my personal view, and Carolyn, or Susanna, feel free to put your view in. But when you buy, there's some very nice, you can make your own marinara. There's some very good brands of marinara in the marketplace, and many of them have oil. Some of them don't. But look at the fat content, and what we recommend in Food for Life is any one dish on your plate should be no more than 3 grams of fat. And so if there's a marinara sauce you like that has a little bit of oil, that I might buy that occasionally. So it's not that you can't have it, but you want to minimize the amount of oil. And so if there's a really tasty oil, a really tasty marinara sauce, and there's a little bit of olive oil in it, for example, at least go with your healthcare provider. If you're a heart patient and you really need to have 0, then obviously don't buy that. But for most people, I think having a marinara with a tiny bit of olive oil in it, I wouldn't add the olive oil, but a commercial one probably is acceptable. Judy has had lots of good questions. So Judy has this question, and Karen, please add both Martine and Judy to the drawing. And anybody else who asks questions, you will be in the drawing as well. What is the best way to cook, Judy asks, fried green tomatoes without an air fryer? And okay, go on, Carolyn.
I grill them. We put them on the grill at our house. Cut them in nice, thick 1/2-inch slices, put a little salt and pepper, some garlic powder, and put it on the grill. They're delicious, especially chopped up on... Right now, what's fresh at our farmer's market is some black-eyed peas and field peas, that kind of thing. So we'll cook up a bunch of field peas and put the grilled green tomatoes chopped up on top of it. Just delicious.
Nice. I also wanted to mention that an air fryer is nothing but a convection oven. So convection oven is an oven where air is circulating. And so if you don't have an air fryer, you can use a convection oven. If you don't have a convection oven, just use an oven. It's high, high temperature in the air, which is really causing the frying kind of sensation. I've never fried in oil in my life. I've had fried foods when I was younger, and once in a while going out, but not very often. But my air fryer lets me fry foods without oil, which is really nice. So it tries to simulate the idea of frying. Karen, I wanted you to talk a little bit about this came up. So Judy had talked about Umi plum vinegar, and that's the same brand I have, Eden, and it has 420 milligrams, which is a lot of sodium for 1 teaspoon. Is there a brand that doesn't have sodium? And I use the same brand. I use small quantities of it, and I haven't found. Actually, it's the only brand I have available. So can you speak to that, Karen?
Yeah, this is the Eden, and it is all that's all that I've seen. I think there's another one. One more I've seen, but I can't think of the name of it. But they are because they do pack the plums with salt, so they are going to have sodium, but it is really salty, and you don't need much at all. So it's just a little for flavor.
It's very flavorful. A teaspoon goes a long way.
Yeah, it's salty, and it's more salty than vinegary, but a little tart and mostly salty.
It's a nice flavor. This is one hint that I have with cooking is, so for example, my parents are from India, and a lot of people go to Indian restaurants and they expect really spicy food. And in Indian cuisine, you do use lots of spices, but the trick is to be subtle about it. You want to put a little bit of different spices. And one reason we don't generally like North Indian restaurants is they pile on the spices because they think that's what Americans are looking for. So the same thing with something like umi plum vinegar. One thing which I think elevates one's cooking is to use a variety of seasonings, but use them subtly.
And it's healthy. It's healthy. It's it's alkalizing. It's like to keep you. It actually does help keep bacteria and viruses away. And inflammation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that's interesting about umi plum vinegar is vinegar isn't used commonly or wasn't used traditionally in India. And so growing up, I never really had vinegar. And so I don't have the same desires for vinegar that a lot of people do. I don't generally like vinegar. If there's a recipe I'm kind of modifying and it calls for a tablespoon of vinegar, I'll skip it or I'll put half a teaspoon or something like that. But umi plum vinegar is an exception. I really like umi plum vinegar, and just a little bit just really livens up salads. Karen, can you also talk a little bit about blending? I made a note to ask you about blending. Actually, before blending, there was a question, and Angelina's not with us, and of all of us, you're probably the one who best could answer this, is somebody had asked a question about chia. I can see if I can find it. And the question about chia was, can you use chia to make a glaze? Here it is. It was Kathy Sabo. And Kathy, please ask a question. This is a historic question, so you're not in the drawing, but if you can ask another question, you'll be in the drawing. But Kathy did ask, if you make a chia pudding, like pineapple cumin chia, if you add it to a hot dish, would it act as a glaze? And I don't know. But if anybody would know, it would be you, Karen.
I generally don't like to heat fats because it changes their alters the constituency.
Especially chia.
Yeah, it's not as healthy as the raw. But I get, so it would thicken up if you made it, whatever kind of glaze you wanted, and then made your food and let it cool a little bit and put it on top. Yeah, I guess that would act like a glaze.
Okay. Could you talk a little bit about blending? So one thing I wanted to stress is it's easy to be plant-based. You don't need a lot of fancy things. Blending is kind of nice. It's easy. It makes life, you can get a lot of greens by making smoothies, for example. But you'll see we all have high-powered blenders, which are expensive. But I want to assure people you don't need something high-powered. You can get away with, if you want to blend foods, you can get away with a less expensive one. But to be honest, if you can afford it, spending the money will allow you to do things that you can't with a less expensive blender. But can you talk a little bit about blending, and in terms of the blades? Is it important to have a blender with sharp blades or with dull blades? And what does blending do to the ingredients?
Well, sharp, and it breaks down. Like with the smoothies and stuff, if you're blending fruit and stuff, then the sugars get absorbed into your bloodstream faster than if you're just eating the fruit. Or if you want to process grains into a flour, then it's going to get absorbed into your bloodstream faster than if you just ate the rice or the oatmeal or the quinoa or whatever. But for those sometimes treats or whatever, it's a fun thing to do. And like for salad dressing, you can make such a healthier, like most of the dressings in the store have sugar and oil. And so you can definitely make something healthier to put on your salad.
Great. Susanna, can you talk, you were talking about cherry tomatoes, and there were several comments that came up while you were talking about them. I really enjoy cherry tomatoes. I'm not sure if Sungold are considered a cherry tomato, and those are one of my favorites. They're like candy. I think, seriously, if people had found out about things like Sungold tomatoes are really good dates, Carolyn turned me on to Oasis dates. We love their dates. I think if people were to get turned on to these foods, there'd be zero market for candy. It's like, why would you ever buy candy? The Sungolds are like candy, and Carolyn grows a lot of Sungolds. So Susanna, can you talk about cherry versus grape versus pear tomatoes? What are they?
Sure. So cherry tomatoes, and you said, the Sungolds are probably the most famous. Oh my gosh, our farm share, usually around the middle of July, all through August, we get to go get quarts of the Sungolds. And like you said, after a while, it's like, I don't want candy because these are so good. But cherry tomatoes are typically what we find in the stores. They can be red, yellow, even purple or black. And there are hundreds of varieties of different cherry tomatoes. The Sungolds are probably the favorite because they're super sweet and dill up out of, you put it in your mouth and you bite and you just get this burst of flavor. And they're so good. So those usually are mostly what we buy. The pear tomatoes are still basically cherry tomatoes, except they're pear-shaped. So, and they usually are, they'll be orange and red, but mostly they're yellow. They trace back to the 18th century. You'll find too that the pear tomatoes are less acidic and not as sweet as the other ones. And then what was the last one you mentioned? I can't remember.
Cherry, grape, and pear.
Oh, cherry, grape, and pear. So grape, I'm not sure. Is that just another word for cherry?
Yeah, I think so. And maybe it's not available in Indiana, but
Well, I think I've heard about them. Let me look it up really quick.
And pear tomatoes, I really like. The ones I've seen have been either yellow or red, and they kind of taper. They look really beautiful, and they taste quite nice.
So what it says here is a grape tomato is a class of tomatoes believed to be from Southeast East Asia. It's similar to plum tomatoes, but they have a small swat size, and they're also the same sweetness as cherry tomatoes. So I think it's just place of origin and slightly different tastes. But I don't know. I recommend you try every tomato um, that you can possibly find. When I go to the farmers markets, I like to look for one that I haven't had before. They're just great. And they all have different purposes too.
So welcome, Ronnie, for your comments. And Ronnie, if you can turn your comments into questions, you can be in the running for our prizes. And same infinite love and gratitude. We are delighted that you have applied to become a Food for Life instructor. And we can take a moment. We're all Food for Life instructors, which is a program of the Physicians Committee, PCRM.org. I feel honored to be part of the group. And it's a rigorous process to become one of us. And so we have nothing to do with it. Our headquarters does that. And so if you go to fflclasses.org, yeah, there it is, fflclasses.org, you can see about classes available locally, virtually, and how to find out how to, throw your hat in the ring to perhaps become a Food for Life instructor. So I think you have to be vegan. You have to know how to teach vegan cooking and have a history of doing that. You have a background check, an interview, and then you go through a training once you're accepted. So it's a great program. Everything PCRM does is outstanding quality. And I highly recommend PCRM.org as a great first stop for anything plant-based. So congratulations. And Ronnie is not going to ask a question, but infinite love and gratitude, please do ask a question so we can enter you in the drawing. And Judy says the grapes seem smaller than cherry tomatoes. And I think that's the difference. I think they're basically the same thing. It just grape tomatoes are smaller.
And shaped like grapes.
Right.
There you go.
That's it.
Just like the pears.
Exactly.
Something came up a few times today. I mentioned it in the document. And again, the document's available bit.ly/so many tomatoes recipes. M is capitalized, T is capitalized, and R is capitalized. It's a 30-page document. It includes an appendix by my good friend Brenda Davis, RD. She's a great nutritionist and well-published author, and she has a lot to say about tomatoes. So one thing I mentioned in my write-up, and the question came up during the show, is about refrigeration. So I think it was Angelina who talked about that. Generally, produce does better, non-refrigerated, and there are definitely exceptions. Greens, I do refrigerate my greens. But tomatoes, I remember growing up, my mom would often refrigerate tomatoes, and we never found them very tasty. They tasted like plastic. So what happens a lot of times, oh good, there's a question from Infinite Love and Gratitude. So a lot of commercial growers of tomato will ship it green so it lasts, and then when it comes to the store, they put this artificial ethylene gas on it, which tomatoes naturally give off, but they put some artificial gas, and it causes it to ripen, but it's a huge sacrifice of flavor. So two things that I highly recommend for tomatoes is buy organic, buy local if you can, and keep it on your counter. It's going to ripen. If you have surfeit too many tomatoes, then I would blend it, make a sauce, or if you have to, go ahead and refrigerate it once it's fully ripe, and it'll lose some flavor, but it'll still be good if it's fully ripe. But keep it at your countertop, and you want to slice it or use it when it gives a bit, and not when it gives too much, because then it'll be mushy, and when you cut it, you might end up with a mess, depending on the variety of tomato. So those are a couple recommendations I have. So infinite love and gratitude's in the drawing now, so that's great. And the question is, what is everyone's favorite heirloom tomato? Mine is Cherokee Purple and Carbon. I've never heard of Carbon. My favorites include Green Zebra, which we don't get till mid or late in the season. They're small. They can be a little bit bigger, and they have these stripes. They're green. They're really tasty. The downside of a ripe green tomato, is that it doesn't have any or very little lycopene, the cancer preventative property, but tomatoes have vitamin A, K, C. They have other properties. So if you're eating tomatoes and you love green zebras, don't only eat green zebras, but eat them once in a while or mix them in. I love Cherokee Purple. I love Brandywine's good. There's almost any heirloom. Heirloom is, in my segment, I demonstrated some, and I showed some of them. You could grab one perhaps, but they generally are sometimes they're called ugly tomatoes. They're misshapen, and they just have so much good flavor. So that was a good question. Infinite love and gratitude. Karen, Susanna, and Carolyn, what are your favorite tomatoes?
Cherokee purple. I love them.
I like the brandy wine.
Karen?
Yeah. The Cherokee.
Cherokee.
For heirloom. But my absolute favorite is the, I know it's a hybrid, the Sun Gold. I mean, and the riper they are, the sweeter they are. But Sun Gold Sweet 100s. I put in a bag and take them like a gallon Ziploc bag on road trips.
Yep, just like candy, just like M&Ms, yellow M&Ms, but better.
When we go to the farmer's market, when I go with my daughter, if they have Sun Gold, we definitely buy them, and we'll buy several containers because on the way home, she'll eat them. And I tell her, you really should wash the produce. And sometimes what we'll do, if they have water, they will buy some and wash it, but it's too tempting. And so fresh strawberries, organic strawberries are the same way. There's no chemicals on them, but we still probably should wash them. So usually she downs a whole pint, I guess it is, of Sun Gold just on the way home. I'll say, where did it go? I remember when she was much younger, when she was like, in first grade, I would look back and there'd be this innocent face in the back and no tomatoes. It was really cute. So Sun Golds are really, really good. I love them. And yeah, I think what Karen said, that I love heirloom, but I guess if I had to pick one, it probably would be Sun Gold, even over heirloom. They're just they're so sweet and just so good. I wanted to talk about herbs for a few minutes because that came up as well. So Michael Greger, we were talking about how cool PCRM is. Michael Greger, his website, nutritionfacts.org, is a great website as well. It's a phenomenal website. It has so much great evidence-based nutrition information. And I remember, it must have been a year or so ago, he had a thing on herbs. And he talked about how amazingly beneficial herbs are in so many different ways. So would any of you three like to talk a little bit more about herbs? Cody was talking about growing them right outside her door and that her children enjoy munching on them. We have ours pretty close to our front door as well. They're easy to grow. You want to have good drainage. You don't want to overly fertilize them. They're really easy to grow because if you put fertilizer, then it gets leggy. But you don't have to grow them. You can buy them as well. So Carolyn, did you want to share anything about herbs, about growing or using them?
I grow lots and lots of herbs all the time. So right now we have basil, thyme, oregano. Trying to think of what other herbs I have in my backyard. I have so many herbs out in the backyard. We grow them every year, and fresh herbs are always the best. So when you're using a recipe that calls for maybe a teaspoon of some kind of dried herb, you always want to use way more of the fresh. The dried is more of a concentrated flavor, so use a lot more fresh. Like in my panzanella, so in my panzanella salad today, I used fresh basil, which I just don't think there's anything quite as good as fresh basil. It's just amazingly good. So, and makes everything taste like Italy. So love
you
it.
just came back from Italy. Isn't the food phenomenal in Italy?
I had such a fabulous time. Yes. The food was excellent and lots of fresh herbs, and yeah, it was amazing.
Susanna, can you share about herbs? I think you have a garden too.
I just, I always tell my students, we don't often think about the health benefits and the antioxidants and vitamins that are in fresh herbs. I mean, I use cilantro in my tomato salad, and cilantro has vitamin A, C, K, calcium, potassium, magnesium, folate. So, again, I marvel at the fact that even something simple as a fresh herb will not only add so much flavor to your dishes, but added benefits and added nutrients and vitamins and minerals, that our body needs. I mean, we don't typically think of calcium when we think of adding cilantro to our dishes. So, it's easy to look up and see what benefits of each each herb is, but just keep in mind, that you're just adding more good things that your body needs.
Before we have Karen talk about herbs, Carolyn, you should probably go soon because you have a flight to catch and you need to leave at the top of the hour. We're going to wrap up Q&A pretty soon anyhow, but any last
I need to
comments?
change clothes too.
Any last comments?
I'm not getting on a plane like this.
Any last comments before you have to dash off?
I don't think so. I just hope everybody tries the Panzanella salad. If you have a bunch of fresh tomatoes, then it's a great use of, especially a bunch of fresh tomatoes and a bunch of, it doesn't matter what kind of tomato, and a bunch of basil. It's just a really good use of tomatoes. So nothing says summer to me like tomatoes. So, yeah.
Well, let me know when you reach safely, and if any questions come in the remaining few minutes for you, I will let you know when I talk to you.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Right.
Safe
Bye.
journey.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Carolyn. Karen, can you share anything about herbs that you would like to in your experience?
Yeah, I didn't really see that whole question that came, or whatever comment, but about the herbs.
Well, there's a new one that just came in from Eileen Granite as you were talking. And Eileen, I always love seeing your beautiful hat and your wonderful smile. Besides turmeric, were any other herbs used today that really help inflammation? So it came in the nick of time as you're talking.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't know. I don't really remember what we all used. But ginger is a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah, what I was just gonna say real quick is that, like, the if they bolt so fast outside, you can like here in Texas it's too hot, so it's easier to grow them inside actually next to a window. And then I was just gonna say it helps you use less salt. It adds a lot of flavor, and then you're not so tempted to salt your food.
Yeah, that's a good point. So Karen, please add Eileen's name to the drawing, and we'll do the drawing in a second. So this is the last chance for anybody who hasn't asked a question. Karen, what are we giving away today?
Oh, tell me the last name, Eileen.
Oh, Eileen Granite.
Okay.
Granet.
Yeah, one of them is a year-long subscription to Veg News Magazine, and the other is a $25 gift certificate to Seed Savers.
So Seed Savers is a very nice company that has all sorts of organic seeds. So if you're a gardener, you'll hopefully you'll win this, and you can pick whatever seeds you'd like. So $25 gift certificate.
Dylan,
Yes,
can I
Susanna.
make a quick comment? I can't remember, was it Eileen who asked about other than turmeric? Are there
Yes.
any other? Cumin, I think Angelita used cumin, and cumin
And I did too.
It has anti-inflammatory properties too. So cumin
Yeah,
is a really
I
good.
use cumin too, and one thing that's really cool
That's
about
right.
cumin as well is it has antimicrobial
Yes.
microbial properties, and it can help in reducing the chance of foodborne disease. And so I was thinking of that as I was doing my recipe because when my grandfather would have it back then, they didn't have refrigeration, and so using things like cumin would help preserve food. So herbs just are full of all sorts of wonderful properties, and there's probably many properties that we haven't discovered yet. So it's amazing. Mother Nature has provided such a bounty of food, such a wide variety of foods, just in the plant kingdom, not going to the animal kingdom. And everything we need, we can find in plants. And there's so many reasons to do that. Eating low on the food chain is probably the best thing you can do, is undoubtedly the best thing you can do for the environment and for our health and for the animals as well. So, okay, were there any final questions? We'll start talking about our next shows. So our next show, which is I think July 9th, is So Many Onions. I like making onion jokes, and I'll save a few for the show. So I'm thinking of making maybe either an onion chutney or an onion soup, maybe. Susanna, what are you thinking of making? Have you decided?
Well, when I think of onions, what popped into my head was onion rings. So that is definitely what is on my list of things to make.
Do you make your onion rings in an air fryer like I do?
Air fryer or oven, as you said, Dilip. It's only been a couple years since I had my air fryer, and I was making onion rings in my oven long before that. So, ovens work just fine for that too.
Karen, have you thought about what you're going to make for the onion show?
No, I haven't had a chance.
And then our next kids show. So we have so many kids in the kitchen. So I have a daughter. Cody has 3 children, and we have another cook in the kitchen. Her name is Ella. She has 2 children. They range in age from 5 to 13. And so it's next week. And I don't know if any of them has decided yet what they are going to make. It's about picnic foods. So if anybody has any ideas, feel free to share them with us. Thanks, Jody. And Jody, you still have a moment to turn that into a question if you want to be in the running for our prizes. The kids in the kitchen are going to be back near the end of summer in mid to late August with back to school making lunches. And I told Anu, my daughter, Anuragini, she's homeschooled. I've been homeschooling her starting in 1st grade, and she's finishing up 7th grade. So I said that she has gone to school for kindergarten and preschool. So I said that for camps and other things, you have made lunches. And so for her, it's not really school, but it's going to be back to school. Okay. All right. Jody, a question from you? Okay, so any last questions? And then we haven't decided what the August show is yet. I think we have a date, but we haven't picked a topic yet. So anybody who has any topics, feel free to post on our So Many Cooks social media, Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, or send us email. So if you want to send an email to Karen, for example, it's Karen@somanycooks.com, Suzanne@somanycooks.com, Dilip@somanycooks.com. So that's how you can reach us. So Karen, do you have a list of all the folks who asked questions?
I have 4.
Okay, and who are the 4?
Martine, Judy, Infinite Love and Gratitude, and Eileen.
Okay, so let's do the drawing. So I'm going to, just to practice, I'm going to generate a random number from 1 to 4. And this one doesn't count, but we're going to practice. So I used random.org, and I said, give me a random number from 1 to 4, and it came up with 1. So if this were the actual drawing, the first name, who was the first name?
Martine.
Martine, you would have won the first prize. So everybody has, for the first time, a 25% chance of winning, and then you'll have a 33% chance because you don't get to win twice. So what should we give away first, Karen? The magazine subscription or the seeds?
Let's do the magazine.
Okay. Veg News is a nice magazine. It comes out, what is it, every month or every other month? Does anybody know? It's glossy, and it talks about...
I think it's every month, I want to say.
Yeah, I think it may be every month. So let's do a drawing for the magazine subscription. I'm going to generate a number from 1 to 4, and the winner is 2. So who's number 2?
Judy Leahy.
Congratulations, Judy. Judy, can you confirm that you got that? Judy, you got the Veg News subscription, and if you could just comment that you got it, and then send Karen a note at Karen@somanycooks.com. She's going to need your address. Don't post your address here, but send it privately to Karen, and she'll get it to you. So please go ahead and post that you're still on. And if you're not there, we'll give it to somebody who is here. So I'll give you a moment. Yay! Okay. Congratulations, Judy. So you got the subscription. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw again, and I'm still going to do 1 to 4. But if 2 comes up, I'll draw one more time. Okay. Okay. So Judy, please do drop a note to Karen@somanycooks.com. The second winner, and before I do it, is can you talk a little bit about Seed Savers, Karen?
Yeah, they have a lot of heirloom seeds, organic seeds. That would be just a fun thing to look at the website and see what you want. And
great. And then if you win it and you're not a gardener, let Karen know, and then we'll figure something out. But let's go ahead and do the drawing for the $25 gift certificate to Seed Savers. And I think you're going to get an electronic code so that you can get whatever you want for $25, or whatever you want and deduct $25. Okay, so the winner is number 4. Who's number 4?
Eileen.
Eileen. Congratulations, Eileen. So can you confirm that you're here and that you'll send a note to Karen?
Spell out your email address, because it's weird. It doesn't come to me like...
Yeah, so when you email Karen, even though it will have your name and the return address, go ahead in the body and say, oh, okay, Kathy says Veg News is quarterly. Okay, great. So Eileen, can you confirm that you heard that you won, and that you'll be sending a note to Karen@somanycooks.com? We'll give Eileen a second. Yep. Okay, good. Congratulations, Eileen. So let us know what you end up growing. It's still, depending on where you are, I think you're in California, as I recall. It may, if it's late to plant, you can hang on to the seeds till next year or wait to buy the seeds till this winter or whatever. You don't have to buy them right away. Okay. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Infinite love and gratitude. That's great. All right. So I hope you guys all enjoyed the show. Tomatoes are wonderful food. They're healthy for you. They're juicy. They're so versatile. You can make sauces. You can make any number of salads. You can cook them, serve them raw. I mentioned in my part of the show, of the document, that it's interesting, but tomato is one of those foods that actually is a little bit more nutritious if you cook it. That's not to say you shouldn't enjoy raw tomatoes. Raw tomatoes are still very healthy. But things like sauces or slow simmered foods with tomatoes, I can't remember why. Maybe Karen or Susanna does, but they are a little bit more bioavailable. And so this is a case, generally we prefer raw to cooked, because as you add heat, you denature proteins. But if you have a tomato, all things equal, you can eat it raw or cooked. Cooked is slightly better.
That just releases the lycopene from the...
It releases lycopene. That's what I thought it was. Great. All right, so please catch our next show next week with kids. So many kids in the kitchen. I have to start working with my daughter to figure out what she's going to make. And I think she was talking about tortilla roll-ups, which would be really nice. We have a program at Food for Life. It's called Food for Life Kids, and that's one of the things we make. I love the Food for Life Kids classes. We make a tortilla wrap. So thanks, Anne. Thanks so much for your comment. And then our next show is about onions. So many onions. Please pass any ideas on what you'd like to see with onions. Any parting comments, Susanna?
Sorry, I have to mute. My dog was barking. No, I'm good. Thanks.
And then Karen, is there anything else you wanted to say?
I haven't gotten, it doesn't mean they haven't sent it. It's just the last email I got was at 3:04.
From either of the folks?
Right, I haven't gotten any. Oh, now I got JL. It must be.
So whose are you missing?
I got Judy. So Martine.
Okay, Martine didn't win.
I know how to get in touch with her.
Okay, but Martine didn't win. She was the.
Oh, sorry. Let's see. Eileen.
Yeah, Eileen, can you be sure to email Karen at somanycooks.com? Thanks, Eileen. So Eileen, you'll be emailing? So Eileen, please email Karen at somanycooks.com. With that, we wish you a wonderful June ahead and hope to catch some of you next week and the rest of you hopefully in July. I think it's July 9th. So many onions. Take care and thanks for joining us.
Bye.
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 So many cooks in the kitchen, so many recipes to share. So many cooks in the kitchen with meals for you to prepare. We've got fruits and grains, veggies and beans, more healthy food than you've ever seen. So many cooks in the kitchen, plant-based meals to prepare. So many cooks in the kitchen with ideas we're happy to share.
you.